Welcome back to the Purple Political Breakdown. In today's video, I'm going to be reacting to Candace Owens and Piers Morgan. I'm sure this should be a very enlightening conversation. This is just entertainment, I'm going to be honest. And we'll see how everything kind of works out. One thing I do know right off the bat is that Candace Owens has been getting worse and worse and worse with her political stance. So we'll see how everything plays out. Let's dive right into it.
Me. Candace Owens launched her new independent show this week. She's previously described me as dishonest. Of that year, I accused you of falling for Putin's propaganda when he invaded Ukraine, and I called Putin the new Hitler. You said you're such a toddler, Piers, that's way too old to be seriously entering in a literally Hitler analysis. Keep yourself contained to mean tweets about Meghan Harry or the adults discuss foreign affairs, NATO, and Western hegemony. In March the same year, you wrote with a picture of Finding Freedom, the most historical thing Piers Morgan has ever read. In January 2022, you said, I find Piers Morgan to be morally inconsistent, which breeds intellectual dishonesty. I welcome a public discussion with him about systemic racism, a topic with which he's impassioned, although apparently not impassioned enough to speak with me about it. Why do you suppose that is? You added, we're all at the edge of our seat waiting for an answer here, Piers Morgan. Oh, okay.
You should do it more often. I like when you read mean tweets about Piers Morgan. That was great. I salute you for that. That was wonderful.
Exactly. And the truth is, I actually do want to give you a platform, and I have no problem with that. I would obviously contest much of your characterization of me in some of those mean tweets, but that's fine. We can move on because there's a much more interesting story, I think, involving you, which has played out in the last few months, which everybody knows about. So let's just talk about that. Why did you leave the Daily Wire?
Well, unfortunately, I can't talk about the specific reasons that I left the Daily Wire, but what I can do is respond to whatever reasons were given to the public. And obviously, no sooner did we agree to leave than Andrew Klavan of the Daily Wire did an entire episode stating that the reasons that I was leaving was because I was anti-Semitic and I was engaging in a type of anti-Semitism that was hard to pin down. And that is why in my first episode of launching my independent podcast, I hit back pretty hard at him because I think it's pretty despicable, first and foremost, as a colleague who I had a great relationship with, to have engaged in that, knowing that I was not at liberty to say anything. I thought it was...
It's kind of I don't know what's the word, not off, ironic maybe. The right is definitely devouring themselves, and we're seeing it more and more, and maybe it's due to the wave of like social media, maybe that plays into it, but the right has like no solidarity anymore. You would assume that there are certain values in terms of traditionalism, in terms of the being a capitalist free market system, that these type of values are supposed to ground the right, but it's letting very contentious issues, sure, but issues that inherently, I don't know how to really put it. You have the stuff with Donald Trump that's dividing the people on the right. You have the stuff regarding Israel that's dividing the people on the right. What it really tells me is that this whole one side or the other side has no merit. Let's be honest with ourselves. The two-party system does not equate to the true beliefs of people. And we're going to be moving more and more towards basically multiple ideals that aren't frankly the same anymore. So this is just another example of it, with the Daily Wire, which is supposed to be the most iconic right-wing organization that exists, and everything that goes with Donald Trump, with a lot of people on the right hating him, and a lot of people on the left, a lot of people on the right also thinking he's the next coming of Jesus Christ. So, yeah, I don't really care about that, but I am curious about the accusations of anti-Semitism.
Well, I went to college right out of high school, and
this is what happened when you don't have YouTube Premium ads.
Amen, Piers. Amen. I think that is probably a question that was on a lot of people's minds. And, what can I say other than what was it that Kanye was saying about contracts? And, I think it is, even if you believe that it is valid for that to happen, I think it is immoral to allow someone to attack someone and to not allow them to defend their name. And so for me, Andrew actually rose to the level of defamation when he started claiming that I had actually said things I had never said. And he blatantly lies. And I showed that on my platform when he pretended that I did an episode.
I'm gonna be honest, when it comes down to a lot of people on the right nowadays and on the left, I'm gonna be very clear. People in general, I'm becoming more and more black pilled on, in the sense that, not that I don't think they're a decent person. I don't think anyone is truly like a terrible person, but I don't think they're always the most honest, and I don't believe them right off what they say. I really I always take things with a grain of salt. I hear them like, okay, I hear your side. I'm not going to truly just believe you, but I'll hear you and I'll put that in my memory pocket of this is what she said. This is her side. So
suggesting that Adolf Hitler burning books was a good thing. I wasn't even speaking about Adolf Hitler. It's a nonsense to think that I would do that on my platform. And it's a trick also. It's meant to make people feel emotional. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that she's supporting Adolf Hitler. And I thought it was nasty business. I thought it was extremely nasty business. And, for me, Piers, it's important for me to state my name means a lot to me. My grandfather grew up on a sharecropping farm, one of 12 children, in the segregated South, Robert Owen Sr. And for him to have worked the way that he worked and to have instilled the Christian values in me that he instilled in me growing up, the idea that I would allow someone to so flagrantly throw dirt on his name, it was never going to fly.
Did you ever say or do anything which to a Jewish ear could be construed as anti-Semitic?
Well, let's be clear about all of these topics, whether we're talking about racism, sexism, anti-Semitism. Everything can be construed to an ear when you're talking about a subjective ear.
I don't know why you would
that
ask that question.
I mean, I could say, hey, Piers, you even asking me questions. And to me, it feels racist, right? A feeling and a fact are two different things. So what someone construes something is meaningless. Factually speaking, I have never said anything that is anti-Semitic. And had I said something that was anti-Semitic, Andrew Clavin would have simply showed the clip.
Right. A lot of attention has been focused on you constantly referencing Christ is King. Many people believing that although those words in themselves, if you're a Christian, as you are, would not be offensive, that to Jewish people, when they're being whipped up on social media, as they were at the time, by people who are genuine white supremacists and pretty brazen anti-Semites, that being smart as you are, you would have known that to deliberately use that phrase repeatedly in that time, in that climate, was a deliberate act of provocation to people like Ben Shapiro, who obviously are extremely high-profile Jewish people. Did you accept
I'm sorry, which time frame are you talking about when you say at that time?
Well, since the start of the Israel-Hamas war.
Yeah, no. So that phrase, if you're talking about when it began to be a scandal, because I think everyone was quite confused when there was suddenly this narrative that it could be construed as anti-Semitic, which is why it required so much explaining by people of when it became anti-Semitic. I posted a standalone Bible verse, this is just pure fact, calling for peace. And at the end of the verse, I ended it and said, Christ is King last November. Andrew Clavin references that. The reason why this even became a scandal is because of Andrew Clavin. Andrew Clavin did an episode called Because Christ is Really King. And then he accused me wrongly of spitting that phrase at a Jew. That simply never happened, as I showed in my first episode back.
You know what I hate is all this kind of manipulative kind of rhetoric. And I'm not necessarily saying Candace Owens is doing this, but what I do want to point out is that people are being very sneaky with what they say and very careful for what they say, of course. But we always understand the context of why are you saying what you're saying at this particular moment? What is the intention behind the words? Nowadays, people can't be as like upfront with what they want to say, of course, because they'll get caught. There is a footprint of those words and they can be used against you. So nowadays, people are, especially if they're in the social media landscape, are much more careful with their verbiage and what they say on a consistent basis. But it is eye-opening when a situation, a conflict is going on between the Jewish and Israelis and the Palestinians, and people bring up stuff that they usually won't bring up in around the time of this conflict, right? It's kind of off-putting. It'll be one thing if it's like, okay, I do this every single month and I post pretty regularly. This is pretty common for me to post this type of content. It's another thing where months, years go by, you don't say anything like this, and then right at this time when all this like Jewish rhetoric is getting pushed because of the war against Palestine and Israel, now you post it. That says more than you think. I'm just pointing that out. It's not about what you say, but how you say it. And now people need to understand how people are saying things on social media. You can't hear the tone. You can understand the intent.
We just made that up out of thin air. I posted a standalone Bible verse and I wrote at the end of it, Christ is King. And then a Jew responded to me telling me to quit my job. So what happens sometimes is then time passes and people try to rewrite history, but we're not going to do revisionist history here. I tweeted Christ is King appropriately following a Bible verse when I was 38 weeks pregnant. And I stand by that proverb and I stand by my declaring Christ to be King as I have done many.
Again, I don't want to frame this towards Candace Owens in particular, but I do think it's something important to pan out because I don't really know the context of any of this, and I'm not going to believe Candace Owens on at face value, of course.
Okay, so two things about that. Basic Christian doctrine.
Two things about that. Why would you tweet that particular passage from the Bible, ending Christ is King, on 14th of November 2023? What was your motivation?
Yeah, happy to answer that question. So if people remember what was happening at that time, Ben Shapiro was caught on a tape calling me faux sophisticated and some other stuff, you know, a disgrace, I think was the term. And again, I was 38 weeks pregnant, about to give birth, and my husband just told me,
Ohio, this is your call to action. It's an election year in America's future.
Every media person in the world is contacting you globally, asking you to give a comment, to say something. It's obviously a very traumatizing thing to go through in the moment when you're that pregnant and suddenly you're like, I just don't want to deal with this drama. I don't mean like trauma in the very leftist, I feel traumatized by this, but just it's a lot happening leading up to birth. And my husband told me to read the Bible. He said, just read the Bible. You don't have to answer these media members. You don't have to give a comment. You don't have to say anything. These things are all fickle. It doesn't matter.
Just to be clear on the chronology, because the video of Ben saying what he said, I think her behavior during this has been disgraceful without a doubt. I think her
that came first.
Yeah, that came out on 15th of November 2023. But you had posted what you posted on the 14th of November.
That's not correct. You have your timeline wrong. It was the video came first.
So you were responding directly to the video?
No, I'm trying to finish the story, but you just chronologically have it wrong. His insult came first. I think it was on the 12th. The insult came.
Were you made aware of the insult because and then did it
I found out on Twitter with everybody else. It was just trending, you know. And so just to go back into it, my husband told me to read the Bible and to realize that these things are fickle and that all of these journalists that were asking me to respond to them are doing it because all they want is clicks and money, and they want you, they want to use you for a moment that's not going to matter in the scheme of things in your life. And so I wanted to respond to all of these media members by saying that I'm calling for peace. You know, Christ is king of my heart. I don't need this right now. So that was it.
When you appeared on Tucker Carlson on the 16th of November, you said, the respond with the same
I don't know.
Attack. You also told him that day that that's when you first saw the video.
I didn't tell him I first saw the video on Tucker Carlson. I don't understand your question. I told Tucker I saw the video on Tucker Carlson?
No, that you had seen the video for the first time that morning.
That I saw the video trending on Twitter, not the morning of Tucker's interview. Sorry,
I'm just trying to work out the exact correct chronology.
Yeah, I can help you.
Yeah. So you saw the video on Twitter, and then
Twitter, yes.
And then you put out the passage from the Bible as a reaction to seeing the video.
Yes, like I said, maybe it was 24 hours later after that, when everyone was contacting me for comment, I gave the media no comment. So if you look on all the articles, there was no comment given to me at that time about anything because I decided that peace was the best strategy forward. Tucker was booked that day, but he had booked me 6 weeks in advance. That was just his luck that whole incident took place.
Right.
They knew I was going on a show. He books way out in advance. So it just happened to be his luck or misfortune, whichever way you look at it, that was going on at the same time.
So in the build up to this, you'd already made it clear that you said on Twitter on November the 3rd, no government anywhere has a right to commit a genocide ever. There is no justification for a genocide. I can't believe this even needs to be said or is even considered the least bit controversial to state. You didn't say what you were talking about in that tweet, but it was widely assumed to be Gaza and what Israel was doing in Gaza. Is that correct? Were you talking about Israel there?
No, actually, when I wrote that tweet, if you look right before that tweet, I had retweeted and liked something from a journalist named Yashar Ali. He had shared a clip of a congressman, Brian Mast, who got up on a platform and said that there's no such thing as an innocent Palestinian life. That is despicable, genocidal language. And I am paraphrasing here, but Yashar Ali said, and he's pro-Israel, by the way, if I'm judging by what he puts online, he said, can we all just admit that this language is unacceptable? And I tweeted that no government in the world, and I was actually commenting on America, genocide is always wrong. And so, by the way, even if I was talking about Israel or I was talking about Palestine, that statement should hold.
No, I agree.
I think what Piers Morgan is trying to find out is, is she truly being honest in terms of the intent of everything she's saying? Now, I mean, the words are common sense, right? Obviously, genocide is always wrong. I mean, we can all agree to that. But is what she's saying indicative of something in particular? Like she's saying, I'm trying to phrase this properly, in a response to a terrible saying, like she said, this guy said some pretty terrible quote, or is it a kind of a blanketed statement like that's used a lot on the left of the lefties thinking that, or in general, just thinking that what Israel's doing is just a blanketed genocide and there's no justification? I'm unsure. Let's continue.
Justification
I agree.
World for genocide. So I was very surprised to see that tweet go viral and people so angry about it. I was actually overseas at the moment. I was in the UK. And so it seemed very strange to me that people would have a problem with it no matter what side you're on. But in that particular moment, I was talking about Brian Mast, and on my very next show, I clarified that.
And do you think, for the record, that what Israel's been doing constitutes genocide?
Well, what I've been having trouble is all of the people that are pro-Israel and say it's not a genocide won't tell me what is a genocide. What percentage of a population has to be killed before we can use the word genocide? It's a funny little thing. They won't tell you. They won't tell you what constitutes genocide. So I would like a clear.
What? I feel like a lot of people have explained what a genocide is. I think that was I hate when people on the right do this. I don't hate it actually, but you notice they all do this a lot. They bring up a point and then go like, nobody on that side is able to explain to me. You hear it all the time. I'm sure all of us have heard someone from the right go, nobody that, but in reality, more than likely they have, but you don't like their definition, you don't like their answer, so you just follow up saying, oh, you still didn't explain it to me, even though they did explain it to you. So again, once you hear a lot
of understanding of how many Palestinians have to die before we are allowed to term it a genocide. All of the experts can't agree on what a genocide actually is, but they love to float around the word on virtually every other issue. You know, I had Rabbi Barclay on my show on one of my last shows when I was on the Daily Wire, and I asked him that question pointedly: what is genocide? Let us know, experts, what percentage of the population of Palestinians has to be killed before we are allowed to say that it's genocide? What I can tell you is I am completely uncomfortable and utterly against the amount of Palestinian innocent lives that have been lost in this conflict, particularly children. And any person who is fearful of stating that the death of innocent children has been utterly unacceptable is a coward.
Go bold and hit the road in a new 2024 Kia Forte. The Forte stand.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I completely agree. But do you put?
You know, another thing that I think is interesting, or that I'm curious about, is Candace Owens anti-Jewish? And the reason why I point this out is because the whole conversation is whether or not she's anti-Semitic. Of course, we all know this, right? But I'm trying to think about like all the very extreme right-wing rhetoric saying that the Jewish people control everything and X, Y, and Z. I know, you know, she was backing Kanye West, for example, right? So does this come from a place of sincerity, or does this come from a place where you were always not big in terms of being pro-Jewish? I'm trying to be favorable to Candace. I'm trying to be nice. And this just because it enforces your opinion. But I wonder if she would keep the same energy if it's the other way around. I don't know. I'm curious because this is why a lot of this is kind of going around Candace, is because some of her rhetoric, from what I'm aware of, definitely never truly is like alongside Jewish culture.
Personally think it constitutes genocide, which is the deliberate.
What I'm saying to you is
I can tell you
pursued on my show.
Yeah.
What is the number?
No, I understand.
What is the official number? That's it. I mean, somebody tell me and I'll give you an answer.
I don't think there was a specific.
Try it when you have.
Well, it's not about a number.
On both sides of the debate on.
Yeah, but
what do you mean it's a number?
Here's my answer.
And do they give you an answer?
Well, no, because here's the point. It's not about specific numbers. It's about an intent.
But it has to be.
Well, no, it's not. It's about an intent to eradicate.
That's not true, Piers, because in America they say that Native Americans was genocide committed by white men. This is what they say, right?
No, I'm talking about the definition of a genocide.
Yeah, Candace, what are you talking about? It's not true. It is about intent. Numbers do matter too. I think intent and numbers matter. I mean, let's say I look it up, right? Let's look up the definition of genocide. And I think there is a legal definition as well. But let's just do casual Google search. Definition of genocide is the intentional destruction of a people in a whole or in part. So intent is very much involved in genocide, but I am confident that it requires a certain level of eradication too. Like, all right, let's say there is, well, I guess it doesn't involve a number, because if there is, for example, 30 aliens, I'm just going to use a blanketed statement, 30 aliens, they come to Earth and someone decides to kill all 30 aliens. 30 is not a large number, a large number compared to like all the humans on the planet, but that's still a genocide. You genocided 30 aliens and you wiped them out. So I don't think the number really matters. I do think some type of proportion probably matters, but I don't think the number actually matters. Because the reason why I say proportion, because let's say if it's like there's 1 million aliens and you only eliminate 4, would you still call that a genocide? I don't think the proportion kind of matches up the magnitude of what you're doing, but the intent is still there. So a lot of things to consider, but ultimately Candace is wrong. Intent 100% matters. I don't know what she's talking about.
It is.
But what I'm telling you is that that would be incorrect because the majority of Native Americans died from smallpox. It was accidental. Some 90% of Native Americans died from smallpox, and it's considered a genocide.
No, I understand. I'm telling you what the definition of genocide is, which is not about a specific number in any circumstance. It's about an intent to target and eradicate a whole people based on their.
I'm disputing that by telling you that they legally say within America that Native Americans, a genocide was committed against Native Americans.
There was a genocide. Now it would be. What is Candace talking about? Now, in terms of smallpox, we know a lot of them killed Native Americans, but that kind of goes against your point in terms of the number. It wasn't I don't think it was the intent of white people or Americans, whatever you want to say, to give them smallpox. It might have been. I haven't read anything, so I mean, I could be wrong regarding it. But if it was the intent to give them smallpox to kill them off, then that's a genocide. If it wasn't, then sure. But they did other stuff besides the smallpox stuff. So Candace is just completely wrong right now. I'm not gonna lie.
Americans. Factually speaking, 90% of them, 90 to 93% of them died from smallpox. So it was actually an epidemic, right? So is the definition shifting? Because it is my understanding from Rabbi Barclay that the definition of anti-Semitism shifts. So maybe the definition of genocide has shifted, but
let me read you the exact wording and see whether you think it applies to. Let me read you the exact definition of genocide from the Oxford English Dictionary: the deliberate killing of a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim of destroying that nation or group. So by that definition, do you believe that is what's happening to the Palestinian people and it's being perpetrated by Israel?
Well, I would say is that Israel has proven in the past that they can be very specific when they want to get somebody out, whether that's a hostage or any other certain military operation. And what I am seeing happening, forgetting the specific language of a genocide, is something that I'm using my platform to speak out against, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to me what the media calls me. I've had every headline. I do not believe that they are being careful in what they are doing. I think it has been it seems to me that the destruction of the hospitals and the schools and of the UN buildings. Would you say, Piers, that you believe that's unintentional?
I do not believe Israel's waging genocide. I think that.
Do you believe? But I'm asking you, do you believe that
I think the scale
in the hospital?
Well, no, I'll be clear with you. I can answer the question. I have said repeatedly in the last few weeks and months that I think the proportionality of Israel's response is now unacceptable, and particularly since they decided to go into Rafah, a refugee camp that they set up to then target.
I also want to declare, from my point of view, that a lot of the stuff with Rafah is unexcusable. I'm not a fan of a lot of the stuff they've been doing in Rafah either. A lot of the other stuff is very gray in the sense that, yeah, there's people in Hamas. Okay, how much people, like, it's a lot of gray, but I don't think there's anybody that's excusing anything they're doing in Rafah in particular, especially with the numerous amount of attempts to try to broker some type of peace. And then Netanyahu and his group don't seem like they want it. A matter of fact, there are centrist government officials in Israel that are leaving his cabinet because of how they're kind of handling things. So a lot of the stuff recently in terms of Israel can 100% be criticized. I have no problem with criticizing how Israel's handling things moving forward. Of course, Hamas still also unexcusable. That's just a no-brainer. So what you can do is go like, Hamas sucks, and a lot of the Israelis, especially the right-wing rhetoric, and especially a lot of the things they've been doing recently from, like, I don't know, like a few months ago, ever since they kind of decided to start pushing Rafah, all of that is unexcusable as well. So both things can be true. I'm not gonna lie.
Hamas in the middle of a refugee camp where you're bound to kill so many innocent civilians in the process, I think is unacceptable. But I'm just curious, given that you tweeted about genocide and no government ever has a right to do it, whether by your calculation from that definition, what Israel is doing is deliberately killing a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim of destroying that nation or group.
Yeah, well, what I can say to you, again, because these definitions shift, I don't think we need to focus on the word, because I'm telling you what I believe. And my belief is that they are not being careful whatsoever. My belief is that there has been too much loss of Palestinian life.
That's different to genocide, though.
Okay, that's fine. We don't need to. I don't know why you're obsessing over this one word.
Because you keep on saying it's a genocide. That's what I'm saying. Candace Owens has been. She's just not been. I'm not trying to be mean, but Candace Owens has not been it, bro. I'm just gonna be very clear. Sure, she doesn't really know what she's talking about. She's smart, but I don't know. I'm trying to kind of like give her leeway without kind of being super blunt and aggressive because I can be, and I want to be a little bit more PC. I don't hate Candace Owens, um, but it could be two things. There's certain beliefs she may have against Jewish people in general, and then two, she feels like everybody's against her, so she's constantly just fighting back. And these are just common human responses, human interactions. So it's hard to really assess properly.
Is
tweeted
that
about
I'm telling you,
genocide.
just like you told me,
I'm only
the
trying to figure
tweet
out
is
what-
about Brian Mast. So you're harping on this issue. There's a lot more topics we should talk about.
There
I'm
are.
being very clear in how I feel about this issue. The Israeli government is not being careful in how they're dealing with this.
That's
I
fair
agree
enough.
that the amount of death has been completely unacceptable. When I tweeted that was back in November. So we're talking way more lives that have been lost. And that tweet was about Brian Mast. So
I get it. Now, here's
I
my
could never
reason.
imagine the amount of dead Palestinian children that I would see on my X feed since then.
It's horrific.
It's heartbreaking to me as a mother. It's horrific to me that the media seems almost complicit in the dehumanization of Palestinians. And I will not be on that side because at the end of the day, the hit pieces, the name calling, the anti-Semitism, the psychopathic language that seems to be coming out of people means nothing. And I want to make sure everybody knows this, right? At the end of the day, you are going to have to account to God for the things that you allowed, the things that you were complicit in, and for the things that you did not have enough courage to state.
Okay,
The amount of death of Palestinian children has been unacceptable, full stop.
Okay,
Bibi Netanyahu, in my view, should not be given an invitation to Congress. I think it's unacceptable.
I agree.
Unacceptable.
I don't
And to
think
be
he should
clear,
be-
for whatever the
he
reason,
shouldn't be leader
when
of
it comes to the topic of Israel, it does seem that journalists are fearful to critique Israel.
Well, I'm not
and why
at all,
is that?
so-
Because I would say, Piers, that you too. You seem a little fearful to critique Israel and to want to always seem that you're coming across a little bit understanding of everything they're doing. What is it that makes
The problem is Candace just doesn't understand the nuances. The problem is that she thinks anybody who doesn't agree with her is just on the wrong side of history. When in reality, a lot of these situations, a lot of them are gray for a good reason because there's two sides to every story. Now, one thing that is going to eventually happen is once you reach the points of unanimously understanding the wrongful actions, right? Hamas doing what they did on October 7th is unanimously wrong. What Israel is doing with Rafah, I think for the most part, a lot of people think it's wrong. Candace is just preaching to an empty choir, and what she wants is that she wants a lot of people to just believe what she's saying, but she doesn't really understand what she's saying. She's just kind of doing the exact same thing that lefties do. She is being a victim of the moment. Everything that she used to criticize, she's doing. So it just tells you that a lot of these people are two sides of the same coin. They try to pretend that they're different, but a lot of them are not. And maybe that's just human, right? Maybe that's just human.
journalists, corporate journalists,
okay, let me respond.
fearful of saying,
Can I
like, hey,
respond?
Israel has done a ton of things that have been very wrong.
Yes, and I have said they're wrong. I think Netanyahu should go. I think half of that cabinet should go because some of them have definitely been using genocidal language. I think a lot of what Israel's been doing the last few weeks is completely unacceptable. But ultimately, I also, from the start of this conflict, believe that Israel not only had a right to defend itself after the terror attack on October the 7th, but a fundamental duty to its people. And here's where I'm just curious about your tweeting through this procedure, this whole war, because on October the 7th, you didn't tweet anything. You didn't tweet anything on October the 8th. And October the 9th, you tweeted so much world peace ever since we got the orange man out of office. So glad the adults are back in charge. A lot of people say, well, if you care this
W by Candace Owens. Yes, get the orange man out of office. I don't know if that's I don't know if that was a true statement, but like, if she's anti-Trump, I'm with you. I'm with you.
much about innocent people being killed, why didn't you say anything when 1,200 people were massacred to death in the most brutal, barbaric manner in this awful terror attack? by
I wonder
Hamas,
if she's
and nearly 7,000 more were wounded, some of them catastrophically and irreparably. Why did that not compel you to say anything?
Well,
Pizza parties are better with crispy
Oh,
crust and gooey
YouTube
cheese.
ads. I don't have YouTube preview.
first and foremost, Israel's a foreign country. So typically I talk about topics that have to do with America. Secondly, you're only quoting my Twitter feed.
Okay, her first is irrelevant because she's talking about Israel right now. So that was stupid. What was her second?
I'm also on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram. I also had a daily podcast in which I did respond directly about what happened and called the events horrific multiple times, said what Hamas did was absolutely horrific. So,
But did you say it was horrific at the time of when it happened? Right? Both of those responses were not good. Both of those responses were not good.
So you're using a snapshot of my Twitter feed where you're acknowledging that I didn't tweet for days to suggest that I didn't have anything to say about what had happened. Now, to be clear, I am consistent on all matters. I do not want America involved whatsoever in anything that is happening in Israel. I don't want my dollars sent over to Israel. We should not be supporting Israel. Obviously, Thomas Massey has done a lot of work showing how it doesn't even make economic sense that we have so much debt and yet we're sending money over to support Israel. And the biggest issue, by the way, that I have with Israel,
I'll let her finish.
talking about them being above reproach, is the fact that they are supplying the arms to murder Christians. Okay, in Armenia, the oldest Christian country in the world, and yet nobody talks about that for whatever reason.
What this sounds like to me personally, is that it sounds like that the whole I think it's so ridiculous when people say we shouldn't send resources to other countries, even though we're allies with them. I think that it's one of the most ridiculous statements you can make, especially knowing America's role. The whole tax dollar stuff is bullshit. It really is. Of course, people can be upset about where their money is going to. But one thing you also need to realize is that we will help our allies every single time. That's just how foreign affairs kind of works. But I mean, a lot of these times, I think the better thing to say is that I personally don't support the war, so I don't want my tax dollars going to it. Not that America's wrong because they're doing it. America will always support their allies. So that's just ignorance to think that and think otherwise. That I don't know why people keep on saying that. Now the stuff regarding the Christian stuff, I don't know much about it, I'll be honest. But I wonder if this is something that she looked up after she started getting attacked. I wonder if she cared about this before the whole Jewish stuff. I'm betting that she looked it up afterwards so she gets some ammo. I'm betting this is just a response to her attacks. Again, a normal human emotion, a normal human action, but again, this is the same thing someone on the left would do. There's really nothing different between Candace Owens right now and a lefty. I'll be honest.
It seems to be the circumstance that when Jewish people die in Israel, it's wall-to-wall coverage. But when Christians die all over the world, nobody talks about it. Everyone wants to correlate everything to World War II. Everyone wants to talk about Adolf Hitler, and rightfully so, he was a horrific person. But nobody wants to talk about Henry Yagoda, right? Nobody wants to talk about the Bolsheviks. Nobody wants to talk about the Christian Holocaust. I am tired of
You see what you I think we all see what this is screaming. She's tired of people talking about Jewish people, talking about Jewish people. I'm sure a lot of y'all heard the phrase whataboutisms. It's when you are talking about a particular subject, but instead of addressing what the contents of the subject that you're talking about, you say, what about this? Basically trying to shift the conversation and saying the points that we're talking about is relatively unimportant because we also don't talk about these other stuff. And it's one of the weakest ways, one of the weakest ways to have a conversation. And I hate when people do it every single time. Let's focus on what we're talking about. Can you recognize that I recognize sometimes when I have conversations that someone brings up a point about X, Y, and Z. And when they do, I go like, I didn't know that. I agree. We should talk about that too. Well, when Candace Owens is doing what she's doing right now, it's not I care about this other issue. That's not what it seems like. It is I don't want to talk about Jewish people. I'm getting attacked. Let me add some ammo because I'm a Christian. We're just talking about Christian issues. It seems like trying to pivot the conversation because of her lack of support of Israel and with the Jewish cause. Bringing up World War II and Adolf Hitler is crazy. Saying, why do we always talk about Adolf Hitler and World War II? That's a crazy thing to bring up, right? Why don't we talk more about the Christians dying? But you know what's hilarious? Maybe, well, to be fair, I feel like people on the right do this a lot, actually. So this is more in line with people on the right do whataboutisms quite a bit. Because like when you talk about like what happened with black people, Candace Owens would probably bring up what about white people, right? What about this? What about that? Talk about issues that are concerning, and then they talk about what about this issue that you guys are not talking about. So I think that is actually a pretty common right wing tactic, actually.
Of the media, exhausted of the media not speaking about what is happening to Christians all around the world. And it is especially horrific while at the exact same time that it is happening, the slaughter of Christians in Armenia, the arms being supplied by Israel, that the media turns the other way and says, oh, okay, but what about Israel? What about what's happening in Israel? So you know what I'm asking for? Actual equality, okay? Because it seems like this.
Like I said, I don't know anything about the Armenian situation, so I'm not really going to speak on it. I don't know the context. Again, I'm not going to believe Candace Owens at face value. But I mean, if she is correct and there is something terrible going on, then yeah, we got to bring attention to it. I don't think anybody should disagree with that.
This is like a special category, the special relationship that we have. I'm a Christian first, okay? And so my concerns are going to be with what's happening to Christians all around the world, because it is us. We are the number one.
See, you guys see what you're noticing? I'm going to focus on what happens to Christians first. I wonder if Candace Owens kept the problem is it just seems like out of nowhere of this whole rhetoric about trying to protect Christians. When have you gone out of your way? When all these lectures and stuff you do never seem like you were trying to protect Christians. I've never heard Candace Owens go through a rally of talking about the persecution of Christians. Regardless if you agree with it or not, at least stay consistent on your values. All of it seems like a reactionary circumstance of what is going on with Israel and Israel and Palestine. And now you are acting like you care when in reality before it didn't seem like you had these strong stances of Christian persecution. I don't know, man. That it seems pretty glaring to me what Candace Owens is
most
about.
Persecuted religion in the world. And all Christians watching this need to realize the time is now to start speaking up, because we have been silenced about the things that are happening to us for a very long time.
So
the media is
instead
very
of-
clearly not our friend. When there is wall-to-wall coverage of Christians being killed in Armenia, Christians being killed in Nigeria, and the treatment of Christians in America and all across the globe today, then you ask me if I will use my platform and I will use my voice to speak about what's happening in Israel. How about that?
Okay. I think that's a perfectly reasonable point to make. The final question I'll ask you on this issue of the Daily Wire centers around the Christ is King, because it has long been a core slogan of people like Nick Fuentes and other, for want of a better phrase, white supremacists, white nationalists, whatever you want to call them. The Daily Wire co-founder Jeremy Boring said on X, how is saying Christ is King anti-Semitic? The same way anything becomes anti-Semitic when it's used for the purpose of expressing anti-Semitism. It's like asking, how does a shovel become a murder weapon when it's used to murder someone? This isn't hard. A shovel is not innately a murder weapon. Saying Christ is King is not innately anti-Semitic. It's all about how a thing is used. Saying Christ is King for an evil purpose, like using it as a weapon to express your hatred or disdain for the Jews, is a grave sin. God will not be mocked. Invoking him in vain self-promotion or to troll Jews or to attack the political rivals is to carry forth his name in vain. What would your response be to that?
At US Bank, when we say we're in it with you, we mean it. Not just for the good stuff, the grant.
My response would be that I am an unapologetic free market capitalist. I think Jeremy Boring, as the co-CEO of Daily Wire, went to the market with his idea on Christ is King, and the market has a right to respond. They believe in what he's saying, and I think that what he is saying is true and is right, then they will support the Daily Wire and they will support their mission. If they believe that it is wrong, then they will stop supporting the Daily Wire. I can't speak on behalf of
I'm gonna skip
that
ahead.
a Jewish man would threaten to
Well, no,
drug
because
someone so they couldn't see their family. Is that outrageous? Is that anti-black? Do you think that's racist?
Well, whatever the circumstances of that wasn't...
No. Piers, answer the question.
You,
you're quick to say that a threat that you perceived, the language of him saying that he was going to go DEFCON 3, and just to be clear, DEFCON 3 is a defensive military position on some Jewish people, or Jewish people as a whole. I don't remember the exact
context of how you...
All right, let me hear this Kanye West thing. I'm going to skip ahead because, I mean, if you want to watch the full thing, feel free to go to Piers Morgan. I'll hear this Kanye West thing, COVID thing. Zelensky is a criminal. The West is... Taylor Swift is the most toxic feminist ever. Oh, my God, bro. Candace is so unhinged. All right, let's hear it.
I want to be clear.
Yeah.
I do not know what is the context of what you just said to me. As I just said to you, if it was pertaining to Rabbi Shmuley, who I think is a piece of filth, who has gotten away with everything in the media, and I'm grateful that people are understanding that man has harassed me for 2 years, and I'm grateful that for any person that has supported me in responding to Rabbi Shmuley and his had daughter, okay? If you are going to pointedly ask me if I am uncomfortable with the fact that Nick Fuentes also believes that Christ is King, I want every single person in the world to declare Christ is King. Whether you believe that to be a Nazi, a white supremacist, a Jew, a Muslim, it is the phrase itself that I want declared, okay? That's it, okay?
turn to, I would say, a less contentious matter, but it's not really. It's Kanye West. I interviewed him at length towards the end of last year. You've been pretty supportive of Ye, formerly Kanye West, even after he tweeted DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. He posted, I'm singing tonight, when I wake up, I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. And you wrote on the social media site Parler, if you're an honest person, you do not think this tweet was anti-Semitic. I mean, I don't know, why would you conclude that? Because it seems to me it's a pretty brazen statement of anti-Semitism to go DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. How else could it be construed?
Yeah, sure. I can tell you how it's going to be construed, because this is one of the things that's fascinating. First, I'd like to point to how interesting it is that the entire world came down on Kanye West, canceled him, took away his contracts, made his entire family come out and make statements against him when he tweeted that he was going to go DEFCON 3 on some Jewish people, I think is what he wrote verbatim. And now we fast.
Let's look it up. Kanye West tweet about Jewish people. Kanye West DEFCON 3 tweet. He would go DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. What about some? There's no some Jewish people here. Again, Candace being very manipulative with her words. So
fast forward to today when Israel was literally going DEFCON 3 on Palestinians.
He didn't say some, he said on Jewish people.
Okay, sure. And now we fast forward to today when Israel is literally going DEFCON 3 on Palestinians in those same media numbers.
What does that have to do with anything? Again, that's a pivot. Instead of responding to the question and what you said, you pivoting about, but nah. See, Candace Owens, I wish people are just becoming, to be fair, they're becoming more intelligent with how to kind of weasel their way around the words that they say. It's
First, seem extremely cautious in their language. So the tweet is actual death, but the actual bombs being dropped, for some reason, real violence is something that the media can get comfortable with. Let's point to that, because now some time has passed. But to answer your question of how I could have said that statement, obviously, you understand Ye is my friend, and I understood what was happening in his life and what had caused him to say that. He said when he woke up, he was going to go DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. He was talking about specific Jewish people in his life that he believed had been taking advantage of him. And he then produced, and for whatever reason, the media was not interested in covering it extensively, a tweet from one of those people, Harley Pasternak, threatening to put him on a Psych 5150 hold and to drug him, and so that his visit with his kids wouldn't be the same. How Harley Pasternak has not been chased out of Hollywood after threatening to drug someone and take their kids away is the question that you should be asking. Now, I was privy not only to what Harley Pasternak.
Terrible tweet, but let me look up this Harley Pasternak guy. I don't know the context. I remember something along those lines. Harley Pasternak. Kanye. Quote on Kanye. I'm trying to look up this because I do want to fact check Candace, and I also want more context. I think Kanye has a history of mental health issues, and it appears that he's probably going through an episode right now. If people would continue to give him a platform to discuss hateful anti-Semitic rhetoric, they're complicit. So I applaud Facebook and Twitter. Oh, here we go. Threatens to institutionalize Kanye West. Let me see this. West shared who is Jewish with him based on fact. Second option, okay. Following his anti-Semitic rants, West shared text purportedly sent by Pasternak, who is Jewish, that began by offering to him a loving and open conversation with him based on fact. Pasternak also asked his former friend and client to refrain from cuss words or crazy stuff. Second option, I have you institutionalized again, where they medicate the crap out of you and you go back to zombie land forever. Play date with the kids just won't be the same. Oh, here's the quote. This is what Harley Pasternak said. I'm gonna help you one of a couple ways. First, you and I sit down and have a loving and open conversation, but you don't use cuss words, and everything that is discussed is based in fact and not some crazy stuff that dumb friend of yours told you or you saw in a tweet. Second option, I have you institutionalized again, where they medicate the crap out of you and you go back to zombie land forever. Play date with the kids just won't be the same. I'll be very clear. This Harley guy sucks. That's a terrible thing to say to a person. I'm not gonna lie. And that does lead into the potential corruption that may happen in Hollywood. I do not deny any of that, of course. Two things can be true. Kanye can dislike Jewish people from his experience, and this guy can be another scumbag for saying that to Kanye. So we'll see. Let's see what else. I think the best thing for Candace to say is that yes, I don't think it's anti-Semitic because Kanye. Well, I think that's what she's saying right now. I think in her response tweet saying that it's not anti-Semitic is not right. I think it's better saying that I support Kanye for against the people that are attacking him. But it was also, you got to recognize, saying that I'm gonna go DEFCON 3 on Jewish people is also responsible. Just because let me turn the page. Just because a black person robbed and beat up a white person, that it doesn't excuse that white person to go like, I'm gonna kill all black people. Like, what? That's stupid. I think Candace knows this, but she's being protective, reactionary, irresponsible, not all that.
Was saying to him, but also to what four other happened to be Jewish people were saying to him at that time. And I think what happened is that he snapped, and he suddenly wanted to aggressively attack those individuals.
If you know he snapped, then why would you protect
none of that changes the fact that what he tweeted was clearly anti-Semitic. When you say I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people, that is a statement of anti-Semitism. Indisputably, the idea that you would be dishonest if you didn't see that for what it was, whatever the circumstances, whatever was going on behind the scenes. The guy with his massive following, which I think we can agree was indisputably massive at the time, for him to state that in public on a social media platform was a brazen act of disgusting anti-Semitism. And all right,
just to be clear, I didn't tweet on Parler. I, on my podcast, gave a full statement saying that if we're being honest, you did not think that he was going to go kill some Jewish people. You didn't. And I think that if we're
that's still see, Candace Owens being so dishonest. She's just trying to weasel her way. Let's go to the COVID stuff because and then we'll end it because I don't want to. This is getting pretty long.
Does it seem to be that is always a circumstance? Like whenever
Candace, with respect, you are deflecting.
How they're being threatened. No.
For some reason, you don't want to.
For 2 him and his daughter did this for 2 years. There was no outrage. None. Zero. In fact, you booked Rabbi Shmuel. You didn't even ask him. What
about? That's all Candace Owens does.
It seemed to be people over what he said.
Move on from and deflect from.
I'm not moving on from it. I'm telling you that I had no information.
Your response was to Kanye saying, "When I wake up, I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people."
Piers, you've said this 3 times. And
I know, because you don't want to.
There's no point in belaboring the point.
I think this tweet is anti-Semitic. You're saying that I'm dishonest.
This interview, I think you're dishonest for a lot of other reasons. So it's about you. My son's out protesting. It's amazing. And then when they're burning stuff down, I don't find you to be someone that actually takes meaningful risks and says what you believe. You kind of take both positions all the time.
Well, actually, I'm not an ideologue about any of it.
So don't pretend that the first time I ever suggested you were dishonest.
I'm not an ideologue about any of these things, right? So you want me to be an ideologue? You want me to stick to one side on everything?
No, I'm just saying that it seems like once the conversation cracks, and this is a lot of people in media, they don't take risks. They deliver the government.
They don't take risks. What risk does Candace Owens take? The only thing is, she had an opinion. People hate her opinion. Now she thinks she's taking risks. You just had a stupid take. That's all that happened. You had a stupid take. The whole stuff regarding anti-Semitism is very glaring. And the context of everything that you've been doing recently has made you look very, very questionable. You're not taking risk. You found yourself in a hard place. Now you're just being reactionary. That's all that's going on. She's not doing anything like she's some type of symbol of justice. Like, what are we, bro?
Government talking point. This was the prevailing and people are like, well,
what do you think I've expressed regret about the COVID?
Well, let me ask you, are you still standing by all the stuff you said about people being idiots for not getting the vaccine?
Yeah, the only thing I changed, because the scientific advice changed, and I've accepted that if there's another health pandemic, I would not rush to accept scientific advice in real time as actually 100% irrefutable, never to change, because science evolves, and especially in a health emergency.
That's a good point. I think Fauci also, I recorded the video. You guys can see the video of me reacting to the Fauci stuff. Fauci also admitted that their initial conclusion was not, see, I have to be careful with my words because a lot of you guys are so reactionary. It wasn't completely right. That's the best way to put it. It wasn't completely right from their initial statement of their understanding of the virus because it's a new thing, which is pretty common. You have a first understanding, it evolves as the virus evolves, and you learn more about the virus. So I think having a blanketed opinion, 100% foolproof factual statement on something that is brand new is always going to be faulty, and it should be treated as faulty. So the problem is people. I feel like people know that this is the case, that this is how every single virus and all the vaccines that were formulated afterwards, every single one of them work this way. But now, because of internet, social media, because conspiracy theories can run rampant, now people are acting dumb on purpose. I'm not gonna lie.
One thing I had said I changed my mind over, because the science advice changed, was that originally they advised that if you had the vaccine, then you could not transmit the virus. And I was then very censorious towards people who simply refused to have the vaccine, because I said, it's not about you, it's actually about your ability to transmit it and maybe infect more vulnerable people. And I thought it was selfish.
That's a pretty big change.
Well, hang on, let me finish. And I was very...
Candace, stop. Just because some of y'all were... The crazy thing is all these conspiracy theorists weren't right. They just thought, no. They had no true opinion. They had no idea what was going on, but just assumed that he might not be telling the whole truth. In reality, we were just given more. They learned more information, and then they told us more information. But just because they were slightly wrong about one thing, people like Candace are trying to take victory laps. Like, it's ridiculous.
Censorious, way too censorious. I've admitted that. Shouldn't have been so censorious. And when the science advice changed and said, actually, there's now evidence that suggests, and in fact, it looks clear, the evidence, that if you have the vaccine, it makes little difference to your ability to transmit the virus or not, then I changed my position. And when I was asked about that later, I said, absolutely. I should not have been so censorious to people who didn't have it, because at that point, it becomes personal choice. But if you ask me on the wider picture, do I think the COVID vaccines were a good thing? Absolutely. Do I think they saved millions of lives? Absolutely. Do I think the deliberate attempt to discredit all science involved in the COVID pandemic is a dangerous thing for society? Absolutely. Do I know lots of people who died from COVID who would potentially have been saved by a vaccine if it had been there when they caught the virus? Absolutely. So do not take my one clarification about the ability of a vaccine to prevent transmission.
What I hate, this is on the left and the right. I hate this is something I actually hate to my core, is that you can't be wrong about something. It's like, oh, I learn more information, my perspective change, I get more enlightened knowledge about something. You grow from it. But the whole rhetoric from both on the left and the right, not everybody, but certain people on the left and the right, they go like, well, you were wrong. So now all your opinions are invalid. Is the laziest thing, especially when it comes to politics. There is nothing foolproof about politics. Everything is a learning experience in terms of how to create a better system. Everything is relatively experimental, and we continue to grow the things that we have in place. It's not an objective, like, factual formula where it's like 2 + 2 = 4. No, it's a growing system. So as you learn more and experience different things and understand different things, sometimes you will be wrong, but it's about growing your experience and perspective and keeping an open mind towards things that you are talking about and things that you are learning about. You can have strong opinions based off your values. Your values will be concrete. Like, I have certain values that I have that, regardless of the knowledge, it will potentially not change my values, but change how I perceive what I'm saying in coherence with my values.
Mission as being some great mea culpa that I think...
That's a huge mea culpa, Piers. That's a huge mea culpa. That's a huge mea culpa, because that means that you want people to go out and to get an experimental vaccine in their arm and encourage them not to listen to independent voices that were saying, hold on. That's a huge mea culpa. People died from the vaccines.
More people died without the vaccine. I can't listen to Candace Owens. I think Candace Owens is actually unhinged. I can't listen to her anymore. I'm done. And I'm fine with people being skeptical with the vaccine, right? I know people who didn't get the vaccine, they were perfectly fine. Fauci even brought up the case of the 6 feet rule not being as concrete as we thought. It actually came from something else from the CDC, and they assume that this will be a best practice type thing. But Fauci eventually, I don't think he retconned it, but he said that it didn't have the strongest scientific backing behind the standard applied to COVID, but the standard was in place from a prior CDC ruling. So they thought, because it's going to be they assumed it was a different type of, what's the word? not infection, but a different type of way it gets spread. I forget. There's a word that talks about how things get spread. I forget what the word is. They thought it was something else, but it turns out it was a different thing entirely. So there was science behind the idea, but it just didn't match up with COVID as well as the CDC believes. So like stuff like that, that's fine to go like, okay. But one thing that is very true is that COVID was killing a lot of people. The vaccine helped a lot of the vaccine saved a lot of people's life. Every virus killed a lot of people, and a vaccine was created to help a lot of people. Every vaccine, when they were initially made, was experimental. And then it's used and refined. And now we don't have to worry about other diseases. But I don't know. Candace Owen has lost a lot of credibility. Her fall is unfortunate. Um I think she has a lot of influence still. I think Candace Owens is I think she means good. I think she's just falling too far right. I think the problem is she's getting pushed towards that side. And I don't think people should be attacking her. The problem is like when it comes to social media, a lot of people attack people who have opinions they don't agree with. And then people like Candace like soaks that up. And she thought initially, Candace thought she found a group because people were attacking her from the left. She got pushed to the Daily Wire, which is center right. But now she had a worse, like she had an opinion that now the center right is not agreeing with. Now she's getting pushed more to the far right. So all of this is happening because Candace Owens she really doesn't have like strong values, what it seems to me. She wants to know the truth and honesty, but she's getting swayed too much by public opinion and she's not staying convicted with her values. So that's my honest thoughts about this whole interview regarding Candace Owens. It's unfortunate to see where she's gone. I don't have any spite. The only thing that I do really like hate is certain things that certain people do. And I hate the fact that Donald Trump's supporters are becoming like cultists, and I hate wokies too. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of the extreme wokies are just as bad as Trump supporters. So with that said, appreciate y'all. You have a good one. Tune into the next video. Take care and peace.